Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome back to the Meeting of Minds podcast. Today, I've got a wonderful guest and I'm bringing to you Amy Stein. Now, I should have asked you beforehand. Is it Stein or Stein? Stein.
Stein.
Stein. Amy is a herbalist, an energy medicine educator, and trauma-informed breathwork facilitator, whose mission is to educate and empower those who are struggling with their health and also may identify as highly sensitive and empathic. She works with the intelligence of Mother Nature and helps us be our own best healer by tuning into our mind, body, and spirit. She reminds us that we get to choose what is best for us. Amy has come to this work through her own healing journey, and she's here to share that with us today because she wants others to know that she can see, hear, and believe them when dealing with health struggles, whether mental, physical, emotional, or spiritual. She has found that when we connect with our intuition, we can better understand the messages our body is sending us and be led down the right path for our own individual healing. This is so aligned with my message of taking time for yourself and discovering what is needed. So it gives me real pleasure to introduce Amy to the podcast. Hi,
Thanks,
Amy.
Philippa. Hi, I'm happy to be here to talk to a fellow HSP.
Exactly. Nice. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? There's something magic happens, I think, when HSPs get together. So, yeah, thank you for being here with us. And tell us where you are in the world.
So I live on Long Island, which is off of New York State. So if you know the Hamptons, I live by there.
You live by the Hamptons. And you're telling me that, like we have been having here in the UK, but it seems to have come to an end, you're having quite a humid fall.
Yes, it's been warm and humid.
Yeah. And that's Mother Nature doing what she needs to do to get through what she's going through at the moment. And that's very much what you're coming to talk about today. In a way, how we're going through that journey, or some of us are going through that journey. So can you tell us a little bit about how you came to do the work that you do today, please?
Absolutely. So I'm just going to generalize. For most HSPs, we feel all these things as children, right? And we don't understand what it is. And a lot of times there's not someone around that understands or has the same abilities that we have. So ever since I can remember, as a little kid, didn't like to eat certain foods. I didn't like to wear certain clothing. I didn't like to go certain places, be around certain people. I could feel a lot of things, and I always had physical symptoms. And I didn't understand what any of that meant. And when I would try to talk to my parents or my teachers about it, I was just, oh, you're complaining. There's nothing wrong. You just don't want to do something, right? You want to get out of whatever I'm trying to make you to do. And it was really hard because I had these sensations. They were real. They weren't fake, right? And as I grew older, it was, oh, it's all in your head. You go see a therapist, take this medication. And so it was a theme I've had my whole life. And I didn't understand what it meant. But I understood from a young age that in order to get through and survive, I needed to conform to everybody else, right? So I became a people pleaser. I became a control freak because we're taught that if we control our external environment, maybe we'll feel safer, right? Yeah. But as I learned years later, that actually is a fallacy because you can't control anything outside of you. And a lot of the times when we try to do that, we cause more anxiety, more depression, more panic attacks, more sensations in the body. And it just actually makes it worse for us. And so I didn't understand any of that. And the more these sensations became more apparent to me, the physically weaker and sicker my body became. So throughout the trajectory of my life, from a young child struggling with stomach aches and joint pain and headaches and not wanting to be in certain situations and around certain people, and being overstimulated all the time. I needed a lot of quiet time. I didn't want play dates. I didn't want to go to other people's homes. I didn't want to do certain things with certain people. It didn't feel good. It felt yucky, right? Like little kids will tell you it feels yucky. It feels gross. I don't like it, right? So I would voice these things, but it was not picked up on. My parents were doing the best they could with the skills that they had. They didn't have the HSP traits. They weren't empathic. They didn't understand any of this stuff. And neither did my teachers. Nobody talked about that. I'm a child of the 80s. That was not discussed. So I would go to the doctor repeatedly as a kid. My parents would take me because I always had all these symptoms, right? And the doctors would run the tests and they would say, you're normal. There's nothing wrong with you. Your blood work doesn't show anything. But as I would find out later, when I was doing my own research, the body will give symptoms and sensations before modern medicine will pick up on blood work panels, right? So my body was giving me these messages, but we're taught not to listen to the body, not to trust the body. The body is broken. Go to the doctor, they'll fix you. And I did all of those things, and it only got worse. So as I got older in high school, I was having migraines, I was blacking out, I was vomiting before school every morning, right? And it was like crazy anxiety, but I didn't understand what it was. I didn't understand that it was all these external stimuli, the bullying, the having to people please, the controlling. I didn't understand all of this was causing physical symptoms in my body. It just was really uncomfortable and I wanted to escape it. So I had some childhood trauma, and a lot of people with autoimmune and highly sensitive people will have had trauma more than the average population. And so the statistics is that it takes on average 20 doctors and 10 years to get a diagnosis. So it took me until I was, I don't know, in my early 30s to get a diagnosis. And I had been going to the doctor since I was in 3rd grade. So it took even longer, right, for me to get a diagnosis. And at that time, the diagnoses I were getting were not accurate in my early 20s. When all the symptoms got to the point where I could not get out of bed. I could not function. I couldn't leave the bathroom. I couldn't drive because I was having daily migraines and daily vertigo. And it got to the point that my body was shutting down. I had 2 broken feet at one point, and I was 85 pounds. And so even then, going to all the doctors, again, I live in New York, so I would go into Manhattan. I would see these specialists. I would see specialists out here. I live in a well-to-do area. We have, lots of doctors. And in the States, a lot of things aren't covered. You have to go out of network and you pay out of pocket. So I was paying out of pocket for all these doctors who could not help me. They weren't doing the research. They weren't on top of the research. Doctors don't learn about nutrition. They don't learn about alternative treatments. They learn about if this is, to diagnose you and give you a medication. That's the course of treatment in Western medicine. And that was that was the course of treatment that I was familiar with. That's what I grew up with. That was all I knew. I knew about these other, what they would call pseudosciences, right? But the interesting part was these pseudosciences have been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So there's a reason that they're still around for thousands of years, because they work, right? But you can't make money off of them, the Western world things. So they're not turned to. So I tried going the alternative routes. I saw naturopaths, I saw chiropractors, I saw acupuncturists, but they still couldn't figure it out because due to the HSP and the empathic tendencies, I didn't fit into the boxes. I was overflowing out of all of the boxes because I had so many symptoms that were seemingly unrelated. But now, looking back on it, they weren't unrelated. It was my body just trying to get my attention, and it went from whispering to screaming.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can understand and relate to this story, right? It may not be to the same degree, the same extremeness, but I think we've all had those experiences where we have not been seen, heard, and believed by people in our life, whether that's the doctors, whether that's family members, whether that's friends, right? And so it causes another level of trauma. So when I was on the merry-go-round of doctors in my mid to late 20s, no one talked about trauma. No one talked about highly sensitive, empathic, diet, plant medicine, energy medicine, like the connection between mind, body, spirit. None of this was mentioned. None of it. And when I would bring things up, the response I would get is, you didn't go to medical school. No, but I'm a medical researcher and I can do my research. I can read journal articles, and I would bring them in. I would bring these books in. That was when functional medicine was first coming to be. And I would bring these books in from these functional doctors, the books I got from the library. And I would say, I read this book. Did you read it? Because it's relevant and it talks about all these things. It talks about mast cell activation, multiple chemical sensitivities, mold illness, all of these things. And the doctors were just like, they didn't want to deal with it, right? Because
Yeah.
it was complicated. I wasn't a quick fix. I wasn't responding to the treatments. And even when I got to a functional doctor, I wasn't responding to the treatments that had worked for other people. And she couldn't figure it out. The difference was that she was the first doctor that respected my decision to say, I'm going to go home and do my own homework. And I'll get back to you if I'm going to go this route. But that's when I really started I'd already branched into plant medicine because I had been failed with Western medicine. Traditional medicine did not work for me. Ever since I was little, I was highly sensitive and symptomatic to all of the medications. We would joke I was that 1% person, right? It's like they'll say 1% of people experience all of these symptoms. I would get all of the symptoms, right?
Yeah.
And we would joke about it, but it wasn't a joke. Like it was my
No,
body
absolutely.
saying, don't do this. This is not right. But we're taught to not listen to the body. We're taught to be in the mind, right? The mind is always right. The mind is logical. The mind understands. But I don't know if people understand this so the mind is designed to keep you safe, right? Your limbic system is designed to keep you safe. So it views a threat, whether it's perceived or real, and that's it. It wants to keep you safe. And so it will not do what's best for you, really. It will just do what it thinks you need to survive. And so a lot of us will be in this survival state for many years until we figure out, oh, that little voice that we haven't been listening to maybe has some wisdom. So that voice started to speak to me in a way that I could understand and was able to recognize when it started to say, there's another path. You've gone the traditional route, it hasn't worked. You realize it's not going to work. You're just getting sicker. Your body is failing. You can't eat anything, you can't sleep, you can't leave the bathroom, you can't drive. Like, you have no quality of life. And so when you get to that point, you just want an answer. You're desperate for an answer. You want the right diagnoses. You want someone to listen to you. You want someone to help you. And so it's a really scary place to be. And so I understand that because I've lived it, right? I've been there. And so the hard part is remembering that small voice that is sometimes hard to hear or that we've shut down for so long is only there to help you. And it will be the voice that will get you out of the black hole. And so that's that spirit component.
Yeah.
But again, it took me a while to get there. I'm not gonna be like, oh, I just realized that it happened. It didn't all click together like that, right? It took me a lot of work. So it was a lot of research, it was a lot of trial and error. I was doing plant medicine for years and I was making my own tinctures. I was making my own infused oils to make bombs. And it was, again, like fascinating to me that all these plants I already had growing all had medicinal qualities. And the thing was, my body was responding because they were naturally created. They weren't man-made, they weren't artificial. So my body recognized them. It was an energetic balance, right? So the body was like, oh, we know what this is, we recognize it. Where it was, the anti-inflammatory, we don't recognize that. And that's just dulling the symptom. It's not actually addressing the root cause. So plant medicine can address the root cause, right? But it's more complicated than, take this for take that. So I had to understand the science of it. And that's when I began to study Ayurveda more, traditional Chinese medicine more. And I was like, wow, this stuff's been around for a long time. Why is nobody using it? Why is nobody talking about this? Like, it's been around for 5,000 years. And so I started to understand, every person has a different constitution, right? And every plant has a different constitution. So a certain plant may be warming and I may be hot all the time. So I may need a cooler constitution plant, right? And there might be plants that are drier in constitution, but I am very wet, moist, damp. So I need that drier constitution plant, right? If I take a plant that is also damp, moist, and wet, it's going to increase maybe swelling. It's going to increase maybe phlegm. It's going to make the mold situation maybe worse, right? So there's a lot of like background to it. So I started to do trainings. So there were free trainings, and then I would build upon my knowledge. I would read a lot of books. I used my library because it was free, right? So I was that person like every week taking out 20 books, like,
a lot of reading.
Yeah, a lot of reading when my brain was working. And it was what resonated with me, what felt right. I started to tap into that, like, oh, this feels I don't think this is going to work. So I'm not going to listen to that, right? I'm not going to read this because it feels like too much. So what can I do that's manageable? So I started to make manageable changes. I'd already changed my diet. I'd moved to an anti-inflammatory diet because I noticed that I found less sensitivities then. If I was eating things that were not processed, right? If I was eating whole foods and clean animals, I was having less inflammation. I was having less sensations with my gut. And I was able to clean up my lifestyle, right? So I got rid of all the toxins in the house. But I still live on an island. So like mold is an ever-present issue. So we're constantly dealing with mold here. So ideally, it would be great to relocate, but it's not realistic right now for me to do that. So we have air filters and we remediate the mold and we do, we keep the humidity at a certain percentage to not increase more mold. So it was a lot of learning at a time where you're exhausted and you don't feel good and your brain may not be working. And now you have another full-time job of not just managing your health, but okay, let me learn how to fix myself now. So I just started to take my power back of stop looking outside of myself for someone to fix me because it wasn't happening. I had to find that inner power, that inner source of listening to my own gut instinct because it was not leading me astray. In fact, it was leading me in the right direction. Yeah. So as I studied more plant medicine, I could then understand this concept of something bigger than me, right? Because I didn't grow up religious. I didn't grow up spiritual. I didn't really understand what that meant. I practiced yoga, but I did it to stay in shape and to move my body. I didn't understand what this whole spiritual thing was. I read all the books and it still wasn't clicking. I was still living in my mind. I was still manic healing. So even though I was off the track of doing it the traditional way, I was still manic healing with trying to do all the things because we think more is better, right? Oh, I'll do more. And then that will make me heal faster.
Yep.
It's not that way.
No.
You just wind up exhausting yourself more, right? And you become more overwhelmed and you tax your systems more. And so what I didn't realize at that time with the trauma piece is that when your body is stuck in a traumatic event, it creates like stuck energy, right? So like we're all energy, you, me, the desk I'm standing at, everything in the world is energy. You can't create it, you can't destroy it, but you can change it. So being highly sensitive, we're affected by different energies, right? So I'm affected by EMFs. I'm affected by lots of things, So we all can, as highly sensitive, we can understand the energy idea better because we're the type of people that will go, I'm not going in there. It doesn't feel right to me. Like
absolutely.
It feels off.
Yeah.
Right. And someone else is like, you're crazy. And I'm like, nope, there's something there that's not good for me. And so back in the day, and when we were all nomads and tribal people, the HSP people were the leaders really of the tribe. We kept everybody safe. We would know if there was a natural event occurring. We would know if a predator was coming. We would know if those berries were safe to eat. Yeah. We would have that knowledge because all of our senses were heightened, being in this hyper-aware state. However, living now in this modern world with chaos all of the time, technology 24/7, our hypervigilance is always turned on. Mm. And so it keeps us in this revved up, crazy, unbalanced, unhealthy state. And highly sensitive people are the canaries in the coal mines because we experience all of this either to a greater extent, or we're the first people that get sick from all the things, right? So from 5G, from the EMFs, from the cell phone towers, from the molds, from the multiple chemical sensitivities, from the pollution, right? So you name whatever it is, the fake food, right? Like there's so many different things. The chemicals you put on your body. So we are those first line of defense that start to fall. And we're the ones that get sick. And we're the ones that baffle the doctors because we don't respond to treatments and we have all of these different symptoms and we don't fill it in the boxes and, they don't know what to do with us. So I had to figure all this out for myself because I would get to a point that I would try something new, right? Again, still in my brain, like, what else can I do? So this worked, this didn't, let me try something else, right? It was like constantly, it was battle still. I was still battling myself. I was still in this internal battle of like, I'm going to beat my body back into submission, right? I'm gonna, like that, the whole idea of like, I have to fight something, but I'm fighting myself and not realizing it because you're still trying to put a face to the enemy. But the enemy is your own body, but it's not, because the body was designed to heal, but we're not taught that. So I was still in this idea of like, what else could I do? What else am I missing? So with the plant medicine, I could understand that I didn't create all these plants, right? Like the weeds grow on their own. I don't plant them. They're just there, but they have even more medicinal benefits than the things that I actually cultivate in my garden, right? And they are there because I need them. I need to use them. But there's this bigger thing, idea, concept that have put them there. And so that's how I was able to like kind of open myself to the spirit aspect of, okay, so there's this other
Mm.
idea, right? Whether you call it universe, God, Mother Gaia. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So then I started to explore energy medicine, and that, how everybody's energy and everything has an energetic frequency, and that in nature, it is a positive energetic frequency. It is a grounding force. It is a resilient force, right? So as we were talking, that Mother Nature right now is acting a little strange, but she's resilient. So even though we as humans abuse her all
Yeah.
of the time, she's still resilient, right? We still have oceans, we still have forests, we still have plants growing, we still have birds, as much as things are getting affected by the technology that we have brought in, Mother Nature is resilient. So when I was able to see that and break it down in ways that I can understand, it was like a light bulb moment. Hey, there's something here. I'm going to go down, like I say, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole a little bit, right? I'm going to go on
Yeah.
the yellow brick road and try this path out and see how it works.
Yeah.
And so I began to move my body with the energy medicine. So I did like Donna Eden. She has a daily energy routine. I went back to Qigong and Tai Chi because it felt good in my body, and I couldn't do yoga anymore. I couldn't get off the floor still. I still can't get off the floor. And so, but that's okay, right? So it's not for everybody. So again, that goes back to you choose what's best for you. So, and I went through that my whole journey, not realizing I was doing it. I was just like, this works, this doesn't, right? So I did neuroplasticity training. I thought I have to rewire my brain. That will help me with all these chemical sensitivities. And you see all these people are getting better, and I'm like, why am I not getting better? I don't understand, because I still was not in my body.
Mm.
I was still using all these techniques to get out of my body. And so the 10, 15, 20 minutes I was in my body for my energy routine, for my qigong, my body was like craving me to actually be physically back in my body, because what I did not realize until about 2 years ago is you can't heal unless you're in your physical body. So there's still a disconnect, right? So you need to be present in the physical body, and then the body's like, oh, you're online? Oh, let's start processing the trauma. Let's start processing through the things that we can release and get rid of that don't serve us anymore. And so even though I was doing all the things, and I was, prioritizing my sleep, and I was blocking blue lights, and I was, cleaning up dirty electricity, and I was mitigating molds and multiple chemical sensitivities, I still was not in my body because it still did not feel good. I still had a lot of pain. I still had migraines. I still had vertigo. I still had a lot of brain fog, and it just didn't feel good to be in my body, because I didn't have, my body knew, and this is how the mind will protect you, is the mind was like, you don't have the skills to be in the body still. You can't
Mm.
handle what's in there,
Mm.
because it was all that trauma that would be coming back. And I didn't yet have, even though I had done trauma training, I just still did not have the skill set to handle it. So for people who struggle with meditation, I was one of those people.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Everyone says it's so good to do it. I can't do it. Why? Because you have trauma and your body says it's not safe. Because if you go into that subconscious area, you may remember things, and your body doesn't understand time periods. So it thinks you're 5 years old again.
Yeah.
It doesn't know that you're an adult and that you're safe and can protect yourself. So it was still this like, oh my God, I don't understand. I'm doing all the things. Why am I still plateauing? Why are things still not where they need to be? And it was frustrating, and I was getting mad, and I didn't understand. And it was like, I don't want to go outside of myself again, because that didn't work. And everyone that's at my table now listens to me. And so that, I'm not going to bring anybody else in. And it was this constant evolution of, I would start to do something, And then I would be brought back into my body. And I was like, nope, not ready. So when I was first practicing breath work, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago with Kundalini yoga, I was again using it to escape from my body. So Kundalini yoga is this really like hardcore yoga, and it's not for everybody. But I was told that if I kept doing it, I would heal. So again, you're desperate. I'll try anything,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
You get to this point, like, what do you got? I'll try it. I haven't
Yep.
done that yet. Sign me up. I'll do it.
Yep.
And so I would feel good in the moment. And then it would be like a ricochet. The next 3, 4 days, I'd feel awful because my body was like, you're still not dealing with your crap. Like, you're still not doing the healing in the body. You're still trying to do it all in the mind.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel safe to be in my body. So again, like, we don't have all these insights right away, right? We go through a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Sadly, it
We
doesn't
got
happen
there,
that
yeah.
easily. Yeah.
Yeah, like we climbed some mountains and we're like, oh, that's a false summit. We
Yeah.
have to keep
There's
climbing.
more.
We're gonna
There's
get,
more.
yeah,
Yep.
right, exactly. Like, oh, we're only at the plateau again. Oh, maybe we regressed a little bit. And healing can feel like that because what I didn't understand is a lot of people want it to be one and done.
Mm.
I did all the things, I'm done.
Yeah.
I did it. I should be healed. Why am I still not healed? What's going on? Right? Yeah, like, where's my magic wand? Like, I
Yeah.
did all the things,
Yeah.
right? And so I knew that that wasn't realistic, but I couldn't understand what else I could do because I had done everything and then some. So I was still missing that component of being in my body. So it was mind and spirit. I had that, right? Okay, good. But I still wasn't in my body. And so, the universe will direct you. I'm a firm believer in that. It wasn't always, but now I am. And because I've seen it work with myself. And I kept getting these messages to do this trauma-informed breathwork training. And I was like, I've done so many trainings. I don't have time to do another one. Like, I still have 5 that I haven't finished, right? Like, I can't. And it kept coming up. You need to do this training. You need to do this training. And I was like, I've been doing breath work. It's not working. Like, nope, nope, nope. You need to do this training. And so I was like, fine, I submitted. I'm going to do it. And I kind of did it begrudgingly. Like, I know I'm supposed to do it, but I don't really want to do it. I feel like I know it all already. What am I doing this training for? Right. So we kind of our ego gets into it, and, and I know better. What are
Yeah.
these people going to teach me? Right. So the crux of it is that it was the first time in this life in 38 years that I felt safe to be in my body. I mean, it was crazy. I thought this is what it feels like to not have anxiety every day. Like,
Wow.
I don't know what this feels like. This is not normal to me. And my normal was always a hypervigilant state, always being on, always being overanalyzing everything, always looking for the threats, right? And having this constant underlying anxiety, this constant churning in the belly, this constant pain in my body. And so it was not fun. I'm not gonna lie and say it was fun, but it was really helpful. And the point of it was why I felt safe to be in my body was the person that was my mentor had similar life experiences, and she really was able to meet me where I was at
Yeah.
and hold a safe space for me. And that was what was different from all the years, is because I had been trying to hold that safe space for myself.
Yeah.
And you can't hold the space for yourself and do the healing. Like, it doesn't work that way. You need someone that's going to hold the space for you, hold the container for you, and meet you where you're at,
Yeah.
and affirm that they see you, they hear you, they believe you, they get it, they know what it's like, they've walked the path, right? They're still walking the path because it's never over until you leave the physical body, right? You're still going to be doing the work. And it's part of the process. I mean, there's no diploma for life. You don't get a medal. Like, you just got
No,
to keep doing
you
it
just got to keep
until
doing
you
it.
don't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
until you don't do it anymore. And so it was the first time that I felt safe to me on my body, and then I felt I could trust someone else to support me in the healing process. And that was revolutionary. And I thought,
Mm.
I have to do this for other people. Like I had already known before that I wanted to do it for other people. And the reason I had signed up for it was because it was trauma informed. And I had, again, well-meaning people in the field who were not trauma informed and actually inflicted more trauma on me, not realizing, that they just didn't know any better. They didn't have the skills. And so I had years of childhood trauma, years of medical trauma that had to be healed.
Yeah.
And then, ancestral trauma of people in my family who don't do the work, like all of that,
Yep.
it becomes quite crippling.
Yep.
And so it's something that I ascribe to. I choose to show up every day to do it. Some days are easier than others. But the point of the breathwork training for me was it got me in my body.
Mm.
And so now I'm more able to fully trust the messages that my body gives me, that they're telling me something for a reason, and that it's not to make my life difficult. It's to help me. It's to assist me on this journey, on this process. And it's to let me heal, to allow the healing to happen, because I wasn't allowing it to fully happen before. As much as I thought I wasn't. And so that was the last missing puzzle piece. I'm like, okay, it's now safe to be in my body, right? Like I can actually be in my body most of the time. Not to say that I don't choose to be out of it sometimes. I do. I'm human, right? We all we all choose to dissociate in certain ways. And so I now understand the benefit of having all three pieces together.
Mm.
So that was something that I thought before I did the training, I wanted to help other people because I felt like I didn't want other people to suffer the way that I had. To teach them the things that I had to, because not everyone's going to read the medical journals. Not everyone's going to read the 100 books by functional doctors, right? Like they just don't want to do it, or they don't, they're not going to make their own herbal products, their own skincare, their own cleaning products. But I could take all that research and I could invite them to check out what I learned, right? And if something works for them, great, you take it. And if it doesn't, you choose what's best for you. And so by doing this training, it was really important to me to not create more trauma for the people I was intending to help, and to explain to them that we don't go into it with an agenda. Like the body knows what is ready to be moved. The body knows what's ready to be healed. And we can't control that. Right? Again, like trying to control externally, but also trying to control internally. And that
Yeah.
when we can align with the idea that the body is designed to heal, that the body knows best, that the mind is only part of the body,
Yeah.
the healing is a lot easier and it it happens a lot quicker. So once I got back into my body while I was in the training, all of the mindset work I had done for years before and all of the brain stuff, it all kind of like caught up really fast. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What's different? Oh, I'm in my body now. So the body was like, oh, you're ready now? Okay, now we'll do the work. Now we'll start healing. We'll start moving things through, but again, it's like an onion. I'm not going to say it's done. It's not. It's going to keep, there's going to keep having healing because I live in the world, right? Like I'm exposed to triggers every day. I'm exposed to things outside of my control every single day. And so, but now, rather than pushing those feelings down, pushing those sensations down, I can choose to lean into them, knowing that when I lean into them and feel them and experience them fully, they move through a lot faster. So the experience example I give is if you watch an animal in the wild, or even like my dog, right? So something happens that scares her or freaks her out, she immediately shakes it off.
Mm.
And that's her body's way of processing the trauma so that she does not have it become trapped in her body. We don't do that as people because in our societies, we're taught to not feel our feelings and not feel the sensations, right? Like to numb out.
Yeah.
Oh, so to binge on Netflix, to go on Facebook, on Instagram, to drink, to shop, to have sex, like whatever it is, you can numb
Yeah.
out and be out of your body.
Yeah.
But it creates issues. It creates, as Nikki Myers says, it creates issues in the tissues. It creates a disbalance. It creates a lot
Yeah.
of And it's more apparent to HSP and empathic people than the general population. It's going to catch up to them. Like they're already experiencing it. They just don't understand it, right? Like, but for us, we feel it and we can't deny it. Something happens where we're like, oh no.
Yep. It's like you say, we're the early warning system.
Yeah.
We're the early warning
Yeah.
system, and everybody else is still is experiencing the same things. It's just they're not showing symptoms quite so
Exactly.
To the same extent. And by the time
Exactly.
and by the time they're experiencing the symptoms to the extent that HSPs will have all the tools, hopefully, to help them. But it's happening.
Exactly.
It's happening everywhere. It's happening all
Yep.
the time. But society tells us to pop a pill, have an operation, numb out. The last thing we're supposed to do is talk about our feelings, for God's sake, and really talk about what we're experiencing, let alone do what you did, which is go off and do all this research and with the help of all the signals your body was giving you, work it out for yourself. I mean, how radical is that? Compared to the way in the Western world where we go to a doctor who has the intellect, has done all that studying, and we should take their word as gospel. And if they say there's nothing wrong, we're just supposed to what? Like go, oh, okay, so it's all in my mind. No. And before we start talking, what an amazing story. I mean, and amazing that the work that you've done to work all this out for yourself. And I love the whole, the mind presumably is the work that you've done and the thinking around it you've done and the learning about the herbs and things. The spirit is learning about your energy, and then the body is the trauma informed breath work, bringing you back into your body. And really interesting, isn't it, that you could do the first two, but until you could get, and probably you had to do the first two so that your body knew, okay, all this now, it's safe to go, it's safe to go here now, because when we start doing this breath work, we're really going to need all this that you've learned.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because stuff comes up, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting to experience because when people say like, what is breath work, right? So it's intentional breathing, but we go without an agenda. And for me, it's different every single day. And for my clients, it's different every single session because again, we don't go with an agenda, but the body knows exactly what needs to be done. So the hard part is trusting the body and letting the mind rest.
Yeah.
But the mind needs that rest. We can't be on all of the time, especially as HSPs. It is exhausting, overwhelming, and it's physically and mentally damaging and emotionally damaging. So for me, the power of the breath is really what allowed my healing, as you said, to like sync up. And for me to not be scared to do it, because we're always scared, like, oh, I don't want to feel it. It's going to feel awful forever, but it doesn't. And so when I coach people, I let them know that it's a safe space. I've got them, right? I'm here. I'm here with you. I've got you. Nothing's going to happen to you. The person is in their own safe environment, right? Like wherever they feel safest in their home, that's where they are. I'm in my home where I feel safe. So that level of safety is really important for trauma, is because that's the first paramount idea of like, you need to feel safe in order to drop in.
Yeah.
So if you don't feel safe, I'm not going to have you come to my house because you don't know me. You don't know my house. You might not like dogs, right? Like I have dogs. So it's a whole idea premise of establishing safety and then allowing the process to unfold however it's supposed to unfold, without judgment, without expectations, without an agenda, without trying to control it and say it needs to look like this, or I don't want to feel that, so I'm not going to feel it, right? And that's the hard part. But when you're open up to it, it's amazing. the things that will come through, like your intuition will strengthen. It you'll just be you'll allow yourself to be curious rather than judgmental.
Yeah.
Right? You'll be more open to what can be. So the way I start sessions is I always start with breath, because the reason I do that, like, it's not just because, like, there's a reason, is because once people have done the breath for 15, 20 minutes, a half hour, you're in a different space
Yeah.
headwise.
Yeah.
And so you're more open to ideas that if we hadn't done that first, you might be really closed off to something I suggest or invite you to do. But after the breath, you're like, oh yeah, maybe that feels right.
Mm.
You know, and then the next day, maybe you have this dream, or you have this idea in the shower, or you journal something, or like an oracle card shows something. You're like, you know what? Yeah, that's the universe telling me to go this direction.
Yes.
You know, or that inner voice gets a little louder and you're like, yeah, I'm going to listen to that.
Yeah.
And it works out, right? Because invariably, when I don't listen to my intuition, I pay the price 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Right?
And I'm glad you've mentioned that, because you said earlier about the universe. I think you said so, but you kept saying about you were being
Led.
led to do the breath work. And
Yep.
just for anybody who's listening who doesn't, like, what do you mean by that? Can you, I mean, I know what you mean, but can you explain a little bit what that means? Like,
Right.
how were you being led? Who, like, where was this leading coming
So
from?
it can be different for everybody, right?
Yeah,
So
it
for
can.
me, like, a lot of the times is someone will call me and be like, hey, I just read this book about this. Have you read this before? Right. And it was about breath
Yeah.
work. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's on my list. And then I kept getting the emails from the company. And then I would get, like, it would be a summit about breath work. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna check that out. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I would oracle card and it'd be like, you need to breathe more.
Yes.
Or I would I again, like, when I feel really chaotic, I go out into Mother Nature
Yeah.
and I feel grounded then.
Yeah.
And so I would be walking the dog, and I don't take a phone. It's just me and the dog outside in Mother Nature. We listen to the birds, we smell the air, we hear the whispers of the winds. And I would get, like, these downloads, these thoughts. I didn't know what it was. Even in the program, like, I was getting these thoughts and I'm like, what is happening? I began to channel. Like, because I was opening myself up more to source, to something bigger than me. That these ideas were coming in that were not my own, but they were spot on. So it was like, put these herbs together for this formula. I was like, and then I would look it up and I'd be like, yeah, all these herbs do, this, and they all go together for this idea. And I
Yeah.
had this idea when I was doing my breath work, right? So just, it's, again, we're not taught to listen to that, right? Because we can't see it. It's not real. It doesn't exist.
Well, and it's, yeah, it's not tangible, is it? And
Right?
it's not, and it can't be explained.
Mhm.
It's a felt sense, and it's very
Yeah.
individual, and
Yeah.
so we can't quantify it, or it's just, you just have to accept it, that it
Yeah.
is what it is. And that's so counterintuitive to the way that
Yeah.
the world, a lot of,
Operates.
yeah, exactly. And I just had a real moment. I just had a real moment with what you said then. So this is like,
Yeah. In real time, it
a real
happened.
time, because I work with a lot of HSPs in an HSP coaching group, uh, and I've been getting a little bit, uh, yeah, I hope you don't mind me sharing this with you, but I've been
No,
getting a
not
little bit,
at
because
all.
there's a lot of people in that group who talk about downloads
Mm-hmm.
and channeling, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I know an HSP, I know my gift, and I'm quite comfortable with all that. But I'm very like, oh, what is all that? I mean, I know what it
Mm-hmm.
is, but I'm like, oh, maybe I'm
Mm-hmm.
just not like that. But you explaining the way you explained it then, I mean, I get words that just pop into my head,
Yep.
and I get ideas, and I
Yep.
get
Or
thoughts that are like,
images. Yep.
yeah, I tend to not get so many images. Like somebody said to me yesterday, I see it. So
Yes.
I'm feeling it. I'm not really
Yes.
seeing it, but I sort of am, but I'm feeling it. If
Yeah.
that, so what
Yeah.
I'm feeling becomes an image rather than it being an
Yes.
image that I then interpret in a way. So, but I was like, oh, I don't get downloads and I'm not channeling,
Yeah.
but clearly I am. I just
Yeah.
hadn't realized until you said
That's the
that
thing.
then.
But
I
that's what's
hadn't
so great
realized
about
it.
it. Exactly. And that's what's so great about being in community with other HSPs, right? Is because
Absolutely.
we all were taught that our gifts were damaging and that there was something wrong with us. But
Mm,
as we open ourselves up to the gifts and we become more curious about what could
mm,
be, they strengthen. You may explore more gifts, right? They may change. They may like the same thing happened with my girlfriend. She was like jealous that I was said, yeah, I'm like, I think I'm like channeling. It's really weird. I said, I'm doing sessions and I know exactly what to say to the clients
yes.
when they're, and she was like, I've been doing the work longer than you. Like, why is, I'm like, I don't know. And she said, well, is it your voice? I'm like, I don't think so. I don't know. It's not like a different, I don't know. And then, so she had the same experience where she was like, oh, I think I have that, but it's my voice. Like, it's my own voice. So I thought it wasn't channeling. And I'm like, yeah, like whatever, however it comes to you,
Exactly.
it's different for everybody. And that's what makes it really cool is we all have gifts, right? And in this time and space, as you and I both know, you need to use those gifts to help other people
Yeah. Because
because
the
there's a
world
lot of
needs
people.
us.
Yes, yes, and there's a lot of people who would really benefit
Yeah.
from these gifts.
Yeah.
And they're not just for highly sensitive people. Like, so that's my segment, highly sensitive empathic people who are suffering, physically, mentally, because that was my journey. And that's where I feel like I can best help people,
Yeah.
right? And so there are other people that, hey, HSP for business, HSP for entrepreneur, whatever that is, right? Whatever your niche is, use it
Yeah.
because we all need it. And not just as HSPs, like as the human beings that we
Yeah.
are, we all need it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really valuable that we're having this conversation.
I completely agree with you. And I feel like you've been sent to me today to make me realize this bit for me,
That's
for you,
great.
this
I'm
part
excited
for me.
for that.
I know, me
I'm
too.
really
Me too.
excited.
Because funnily enough, I just reached out to the guy who runs the coaching group that I'm sort of part of and I'm facilitating on now. And I just said to him, I think I need to have I need to chat with you about something in particular. And it was going to be this. It was going to be, I'm getting a bit thrown by all these talks, and I'm wondering
Right,
actually whether I'm the right person to be doing this. And
right,
you've just made
right.
me realize
Yeah,
absolutely
absolutely.
uh, that that actually I am doing the thing that I was worried that I didn't
Yes,
understand. That is amazing.
right. Yeah, and that's the thing.
Thank
Like,
you so much.
you're welcome. But that happens a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that I was listening to my intuition when I was going to a doctor's appointment, and thinking like, oh, please save me. And then I'd be like, what did they would tell me? I'd be like, that's a hell no, I'm not going to do that. Right. But that
Yeah.
was my intuition,
Yeah.
but I didn't understand it. Right. So again, it's part of doing the work, right? We don't just get to wave a magic wand because then you don't understand the process as much
Yeah.
as at times we would like that.
Yeah.
When you show up to do the work, more is revealed. Right. And
Oh, it
so,
just strengthens that. It just
yeah.
strengthens it strengthens our intuition, strengthens our
Yeah.
knowing about it because it's all working the way it should do because we're
And you're
listening and we're
speaking the
taking
truth.
notice. Yeah.
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 And so you're being authentic to yourself, and therefore you can then show that to other people. Like, hey, you can shine your light.
Yeah.
I know it's scary, but I'm doing it and it's okay.
It
Right.
is.
And we could do it together. We can all
Yeah.
shine our lights and
Yeah.
we can all be authentic and speak our truths and support each other
Yeah.
and say, hey, I see you, I hear you, and I believe you. And I'm here, I've got you.
Yeah.
And I think that is the value that we can all as humans,
Yeah,
provide.
I agree with you, and all this talk about because not all my audience are HSPs, and
Exactly.
and that's not to say that HSPs are better in any way. It's just different. We all have our part to play, and we're
Yes.
just talking today about the role that
Yes.
HSPs
Yep.
can play, are playing and need to play, and we want to encourage more HSPs to
Right.
play their part because that's what we're here for.
Yeah, because
And
everybody has a gift. Everyone has a
absolutely,
gift, whether you're HSP or not. Everyone has a gift to offer. And we just, as HSP, that experience the world differently.
yeah,
So I just lead with that because I want people to know who are also experiencing it. That's okay.
yeah,
You're not alone. You and I both experience it,
Exactly.
as HSPs differently, but we're still, doing it.
Yeah, and it's really important to honor that in ourselves, and give ourselves what we need, understand our needs, and make sure they are
Yep,
being met. We need to look after ourselves, because we are downloading
absolutely.
so much more information. It's
Yep.
burnout comes quicker, and
Overwhelm, extreme,
overwhelm,
yep,
and all,
stimulation.
exactly,
Yep.
all those things. I just want to go back to something that you didn't say, but you were linked. I just don't want anybody to leave this thinking that um being an HSP sort of like comes from having experienced trauma or any of those things, because people who listen to this
Right.
podcast regularly will know that I experienced a lot of childhood trauma.
Right.
HSP, being an empath, they are innate traits. We were born with them.
Yes.
But I
Yes.
wonder, I don't know what you think about this, Amy. I wonder whether, because of our sensitivity, we experience things in our childhood in a way that might make it more trauma. It might
Yes.
mean that we
That was the part I
experience
missed
more
to say.
trauma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, because everybody experiences trauma differently. And that was the part I got off on a tangent. I didn't go back to it. So thank you for reminding me. So as HSPs, we process trauma differently. It's harder for us to clear it
Yeah.
because we are more hypersensitive, we are more overvigilant, we are more
Yeah.
overstimulated.
And we
So
feel it
again,
deeper.
it's exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And so, a similar experience could happen to me, could happen to someone who's not an HSP. They may be fine.
Yes.
They will not have any trauma from the same exact incident, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I will have trauma from it.
Yeah.
And so it's important for people. So this is why I think it's really important for people to understand, because I had like a rough month last month, and I was like, I don't understand why it's so hard for me to clear this trauma. I've been doing the work for so long. I've been intensively doing it for a year in my body. Like, I don't understand. I was told by people, you should be over it already, right? Like,
Oh,
just yeah, right, which never goes over well.
no.
So the more I stepped into that, so the universe stepped in and was like, hey, I know you're struggling with this. There was the HSP Shift Summit. I listened to it again. And one of the presenters, I can't remember her name, she was saying how people who are HSP, it's harder for them to clear the trauma. Like,
Mm.
the work is a little bit more extensive because it kind of gets ingrained in us in a different way,
Yeah.
in a more deeper way, I
Yeah.
guess would be the way to say it. And so it can make it a little bit more crunchy. It
Yeah.
can make it a little bit longer to get through. There may be more layers to that onion. And so that made me feel better.
Yeah.
And so that was my point, as I was trying to say that, thank you. I forgot I did not go back to that, is that for us, the traumatic experiences may become more engrossed, they may become deeper, they may become more ingrained, they may make more protectors come up, right? So Bruce
Yeah.
Lipton talks about this, about before age 7 we have our belief system. It's not our own, it's the people around us. And then because of that, when our needs are not met, protectors form,
Yeah.
right? So everyone has it. Again, it's the nervous system's way of keeping you safe. But trauma doesn't just affect the nervous system, it affects all of the systems. So that's why I had every system had an issue, right?
Yeah.
I had a heart palpitation, I had a heart, like all this stuff going on with my heart, and they didn't understand what it was. So because trauma is not just one system, it affects the entire body.
Yeah.
And when you're HSP, it's a higher decibel
Yes.
of trauma sometimes. It's a higher, you might have a higher pain threshold, but you're also experiencing a lot more than most people.
Yeah.
So thank you for going back to that. I totally flaked on going back to that.
No, 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 no. I just think it's important for people to understand, to know that trauma does not make you an HSP.
No, no.
HSP is, being an HSP, sensory processing sensitivity, highly sensitive person, however high sensory intelligence, which is what Willow McIntosh calls it.
Yeah.
Whatever name you
Mm-hmm.
prefer, that is an innate trait. But I do
Exactly.
think it means we feel the trauma more deeply.
Yes.
I really hope, I've never met an HSP that hasn't had trauma, but
Right.
I absolutely hope one day soon. And if anybody's listening who's an HSP who hasn't, I mean, we've all experienced trauma to some degree, but who hasn't had a huge amount of trauma. I would love to meet you because it'd be interesting to see how it then manifests in them,
in their life.
yeah. Yeah, I really, I really would. That would be interesting. But, can you imagine now that we are becoming more aware, there's more of us talking about it, we can be more aware of it. We might not be an HSP, but we might recognize in our children that perhaps they are HSP, and we might look into it more, and we might give them more of what they need when they're younger, so they don't experience the health conditions, the trauma. The only reason I've come to all this is because I didn't listen to any of the messages, and I lost a lot of the sight in my right eye. That's what my body sent me to completely floor me. 5 years later, here I am now talking about it, and I got a lot of the sight back, actually. But I was told it was permanent. Yeah, I was told it was going to be permanent, but it turned out it wasn't. And
but you did the work, and the body responded.
Well, that is what happened. Yes, you're right.
It's crazy, right? So you and I are proof examples. It can happen.
Yeah.
It can happen.
Yeah. What a wonderful conversation this is. And I didn't meet you until 5 minutes before we pressed record. This has been phenomenal. Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. I think now's sort of a good time to be wrapping up. But I'm just wondering, before we go, is there anything that you haven't said that you would really like to say?
Well, I have a free gift. So it's an ebook that I developed this year. It's 5 ways to reconnect your intuition, and it touches on some of the things. Thank you. It touches on some of the things that we talked about. So getting outside, breathing, be mindful of sleep, be mindful of what you're ingesting, whether that's visually or physically, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's like touchstones that I feel it's quick and simple, right? It's not long. It's like 16 pages. And it has a lot of pictures, so I've broken up. But I feel like it's important ideas for anybody, but especially for HSP.
Yeah.
To just kind of like recheck in. Hey, am I doing these things?
Yeah.
Maybe I could be open to making some of these changes, and then to see where that takes you.
Lovely.
And choosing what works.
What an amazing resource that is. And where can people find that? What do you want people to sign up to a newsletter to get it, or how do they get that?
Yeah, there's a newsletter. I'm going to send you the link so we can include it in the show notes. And then if they want to check out mindbodyspiritbreath.com, that's my website. Mind, body,
breath.
Spirit, breath.
mindbodyspiritbreath.com. And that's your website, Amy?
That's my website. Yeah.
Lovely.
And they can check out more information there.
Okay, and you're going to send me the link and I'll put that in the show notes so that if please go and get it. I'm going to go and get it. So I hope others will go and get that. And amazing. Go check Amy out. Anybody who thinks that anything that's resonated from what we've talked about today, and if you've got health conditions, challenges, that's the word, challenges that actually you're thinking, I wonder if this has got something in, there's something here for you. Go and speak to Amy and see if Amy can help you. Thank you.
On my website there's resources. So some of the things I talked about, there's links to some of the books that I've read that I think were really impactful, and people can check it out.
Yeah, and there's a blog on there. I was on your website earlier, and you've got a blog on there, especially your latest blog is about the upcoming holiday season. I know yours starts a bit earlier because you've got Thanksgiving first, but about the holiday season.
So that might
be quite useful. Exactly.
I'm actually doing so group breath. I do at 12:30 Eastern Standard Time, and I'm actually going to be offering it free from American Thanksgiving through the New Year.
Well, that's a lovely gift that you're giving people there.
So people can deal with their stress in a productive way.
Yeah, so you're 5 hours. You're 5 hours behind us. So if it's 12:30 your time, it's going to be 5:30 our time, which is really accessible. So that's amazing. Thank you for being here, Amy. It's been a joy to speak to you.
Thank you so much, Philippa.
Yeah, you take care.
You too.
Thank you for listening to the Meeting of Minds podcast. You can find this podcast in all the usual places. Please tell your friends, please subscribe, And if you have a moment, I'd be really grateful if you could rate and review, as it helps other people find us and helps me spread the messages of empowerment and positivity that I'm really passionate about. If you want to find out more about me, you can visit my website at www.safeandsupported.co.uk. Until next time, bye.